Coach Vance here. The internet's kind of gone crazy with this long muscle length bias training because of a few studies that kind of showed that either getting to full range of motion through long muscle lengths or even doing lengthened partial movements at long muscle lengths, where basically the torque is high at the long muscle length, leads to greater hypertrophy. That's not really something that seems to have a great dispute. There is some consensus around that, it seems, but there's one area that's not really talked about is how that would affect the management of your training load. Because if you look at these studies, what they're doing is they're really just comparing two exercises. The full squat versus partial squat, the um, preacher curl versus another curl, that sort of thing through different muscle lengths. So they're also volume equated. So you can look at that and you can say, okay, well, that is the key to muscle growth. But there are some considerations that I really haven't seen talked about, especially when you're talking about coaching and working with athletes or recreational athletes or whatever it is, where you have to choose a volume, choose intensities, that sort of thing, really manage training and look at these things in a practical way versus just like, well, that's the answer. We'll just throw in all these long muscle length bias exercises and the effect automatically uh, is better. The issue could be that we know that essentially training at long muscle lengths causes more muscle damage. We know eccentric training causes more muscle damage. The isometric training at long muscle lengths causes more muscle damage than concentric contractions. So something that would, for example, bias more of the load or the torque during concentric phase, like if you're talking about a glute bridge or if you're talking about just a standing curl, you're going to get more torque at 90 degrees and all that kind of good stuff. So there's a couple ways to look at it. You can say, okay, training at muscle lengths uh, could be just more effective, so I can therefore do less volume and get a greater or the same effect. Or if more volume is the key to drive anabolism to get a anabolic response, then you kind of have an issue, right? If more volume is greater, then that means I have to be able to do exercises that create less damage so that I can recover, that I can do enough frequency to get in the volume, and I can do enough sets during my workouts before I keel over. Or the fact that training all of your exercise along muscle lengths, we don't know if that's going to lead to injury. You're creating more tensile strength, especially in the proximal areas near the joints as well. Is that going to lead to joint debilitation as well? So this idea of just like, oh, we found the secret, we just do all of our training at long muscle lengths and boom, right? I'm going to be bigger, I'm going to be stronger, I'm going to be more studly and all that kind of stuff. But it could be you just are injured more often. You can't recover from your training. You can't get the volume in that you need. You can't walk the next day. All of that kind of stuff is not really talked about because people kind of gotten obsessed with this mechanism versus, well, are they even coaching, right? Do they even work with people? Is always a big consideration. Some of these people are talking about this from a scientific sense. So we need to be able to look at these things in a practical sense, and then we probably need studies where they're doing, X amount of sets, X amount of reps, X amount of tonnage with these different exercises to see what the actual end effect is.